we're realizing we were never meant to live like this. On the clock, on a schedule. Our mindset is shifting. Our intuition is being activated. And just breathe. We're opening up to other ways. We are going within for our answers of rest and peace. We are finding joy. So open up and let's revolutionize your mindset.
Welcome to Intuitive Shift, where we come and gather to revolutionize your mindset. Each week we come in and we meet somebody who is shifting in their lives, have shifted, and bringing in that energy to share how their life path journey has gone, and also sharing their abilities and their knowledge with us and giving us little skills and tips along the way. Today, we are joined by the amazingly talented Becca Francis, all the way from Australia. She's an incredibly talented and gifted human design coach, but also an intuitive medium, just amazing intuition skills. So Becca, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Abby. I am just so excited to be here. It's just like having a conversation with a friend, and I cannot wait. I could talk about human design 24/7, as you probably know, when we met in person. I could literally talk about it 24/7. So this is just my happy place. So thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. I had not heard of human design. This is a newer concept to me. It's only come into my awareness for a couple of years. And it really is understanding your human design has helped me personally. It's helped me not only within business and just understanding my own energy. It's helped me in understanding my children. It's helped me in understanding my husband, understanding how our relationship works as well. And are there 4 or 5 different types of human design?
There are 4 core types, but there's one hybrid type. So let's say there's 5 types. It depends who you talk to and which literature you read. I teach it and use it as 5 types. Yeah.
So for the layman's own, what is human design? Like what even is this word about?
So human design was originally founded or downloaded by a guy named Ra Uru in January 1987. He was originally Alan Krakauer. He was from Canada. He was very corporate based. He had his own business. He was an ad man. He was very kind of strategic and logical. And one day he gave it all up and he traveled to Ibiza in Spain. And he spent 8 days and 8 nights in a huge continuous meditation. I was about to say medication then, which is really interesting. Isn't it interesting how words come into your mind and you just say them anyway? Okay. 8 days of meditation, where he described his encounter with what he called the voice, where human design was downloaded to him. He's unfortunately passed away now, but he was a manifester. He was a 5-1 manifester, so 5-1 profile, same as you. And you can search on YouTube for his description of his encounter with the voice. Very interesting. He was very theatrical, very in his manifester energy, but it's a really fascinating description of what happened to him. So this, the human design system was downloaded to him, and over the years, he taught it to more and more students. And it's really probably in the last 5 years, I would say, or around the time of the Big P, that it really kind of took off. I think when people had time to really sit and study it and to really understand their type and how to use it, that it's got really popular. So
Yeah. How would I'm beginning to see more information popping up. And I would love to get your perspective of this. How would you differentiate between meeting with an astrologer and understanding, most people are like, well, I'm personally, I'm a Pisces and I understand where my moon and my sun and Mars and Venus are. And I understand all of that for my personality types. And I understand that. How does that differ? Because a lot of people, I think, well, yeah, I'll just go get my astrological report. That can't be that much different than human design. So how is it different?
Mm-hmm. So the human design system consists of a lot of different elements, and astrology is one of those. The planets certainly come into play with human design, but there's a lot of other systems that are interwoven with it, like the chakra system, like the Chinese I Ching. At the deeper levels, there's genetic work and DNA and lots of kind of the physiological side of who we are as well. But how it differs for me is that it gives me a much deeper insight into me personally, because I love astrology as well. I'm a Sagittarius and I love that about myself. But I am just relating to 1 out of 12 descriptions of who I am.
Mhm.
Whereas with human design, there's 5 types, but each chart is completely unique. So I can look at a chart, for instance, I've got your chart here, and I can see so many of your different nuances that relate to you personally, rather than just, oh, Abby's a projector. Yes, Abby's a projector, but look at all the different nuances that she can only have, that are only you, uniquely you in that chart. That's why I love it, because it allows us to drill down really deeply. The way I look at it is it's like an X-ray, like I'm sitting here literally looking at an X-ray of your energy, which is why when I talk to someone and I can't see their human design, I'm like, oh, can I have your birth details? I'd quite like to run a chart. And some people are like, why do you need my birth details? But I really like to be able to see who I'm talking to. And for me, that's how my brain likes to see it. So it's, yes, astrology is involved, but there's a lot of other detail that you can get from the human design chart.
You made a post, I think it was yesterday on Instagram. And I think for people home, this will maybe make a little bit more sense on a tangible way why it helps when you're dealing with a client,
Mm-hmm.
knowing their human design. And you're giving the example, and it was T Swift and it was her speaking. And you were showing how, see, if as a coach, if I was just telling her what to do, like you need to do this, speaking to her like a generator, that she would shut down and rebel from it. And
Yeah.
that type of a client won't ever come and see you again. You're
Absolutely.
not working. And so the human is human. I feel like astrology are all the different personality types, almost how the mind works. And human design is how the energy fields work, how we move day to day throughout that, and how we truly do work. That's just me, who is very, very base level knowledge of both astrology and human design, how it works. You over a year ago gave the most beautiful story, a share with me that really, and I say this to so many people when I'm talking about human design. They're like, well, you know, how, because you were explaining how it helped you in your communication skills with your husband in the morning. How, you know, he wakes up and he takes in, you know, all of the news and has all this information, and you wake up and he just essentially brain dumps on you.
Yeah.
And he was getting upset because you weren't instantly responding.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let you
Yeah.
finish that. I'll let you finish that story. I'm not going to take
Yeah. I love that you remember that. I always tell that story. So in human design, you can have centers that are open and centers that are defined. So if you put the 2 charts together, so I can run a chart between you and your husband, you and me and my husband, and it will form a 3rd chart or a 3rd aura, which will show us how our energy works together. So my husband has a defined head center, which is the center right at the top of the chart. So for him, he has a fixed way of asking questions. He has a fixed way of being inspired, a fixed way of taking in information. My head center is completely open. So I'm the opposite. If he tries to brain dump on me and info dump on me and ask me, what's your opinion on that? Well, what do you think about that? What are your ideas about that? For me, it's too much pressure because my head center isn't designed to process energy that way. And that used to be a real issue for us because he would dump all this stuff in my open head center. I would sit there like a rabbit in headlights because it paralyzes me and I can't think. And then I feel inadequate. That's what I used to feel, a bit stupid and inadequate. Not that he wanted to make me feel that way. And he would get frustrated, which is the not self of the generator, because he's a generator too. Like, why aren't you responding? Like, what do you think about it? What do you think about it? But now I've educated him about his head center. If he starts on one of his rants, he sees that glazed look that I get, that frozen look, he'll say, oh, I'm doing that thing, aren't I? I'm having a rant. Okay, I get it. And he'll pull his energy back intentionally. And then he'll ask it in a different way. And he'll say, oh, okay, well, this particular aspect of this thing, does that interest you? Like, what do you think about it? Do you have any thoughts about that? And it's a much gentler approach, which means my open head center can process it much more easily. So just understanding that has improved our relationship and our communication. So can you imagine how much it improves communication when you see the whole chart together and see how you might be triggering each other or how you can support each other better? It's a really beautiful tool for that, whether it's a business relationship, work relationship, parent, child, whatever kind of relationship. Yeah.
Absolutely. Understanding. So I did my husband's chart. Now, granted, I don't read like you do, but just to get the bare bones of it. And so he's a Manny Gen, more heavily in the generator, because so generators, they really don't have a shut off. They can just generate and generate. And I am a projector, as you've already mentioned. And, you know, starting my business or stepping into my work, my husband was saying, well, you know, if you're starting a business, you have to be prepared to be working, you know, 14, 16 hours a day. And that's the only way that you're going to be able to generate income and really get your business growing. Just the thought of that completely paralyzes me because my energy levels run lower. And so I've had to push back and remind, like, I am a projector. That is not how I work. Please don't make me a generator. It'll never, I mean, these are our, and I'm not saying they're arguments, but these are important conversations.
They're forthright conversations.
Forthright conversations. Yes. So saying, let me be able to grow and be seen how my energy works and flows. And and him just being able to understand that there is a difference there has really helped us over the past year, really kind of looking and growing. My two other kids are Manny Gens as well. So those three are happy little bunnies who just generate. And my youngest daughter is a projector just like I. And so she and I are taking naps and
so you and your daughter are constantly taking in sacral energy from the other three family members, your other two children and your husband. So it's really important that you don't try and behave like a generator and you don't try and hold on to that sacral energy, because when you're with a generator, so I'm a generator, and like in this conversation, you can run off my sacral battery. Like you can feed into that, you can borrow those energetic codes. And then when this conversation finishes, if you didn't know you were a projector, you could try and hold on to that energy and think it's yours, and then feel kind of a bit less than when 2 minutes later you need a nap, or where's my energy gone? My energy has disappeared. But just now, you know, you're a projector, you have that sovereignty to say, okay, I get it. I'm feeling Becca's energy right now, or Scott's energy, or my kid's energy, but it's not mine. But I can use it. If I'm really intelligent about how I use the energy, I can lean into their energy, but I can also let it go once I don't need it anymore. So that's the real beauty of it, real power.
I love that. So, and I love that you use the word intelligence. So now we're gonna shift the conversation into mindset. So, you know, we've been talking about how to deal with others. How can we use human design in order just to deal with ourselves, our own human intelligence?
Great question. So I'll explain it from my point of view. So my profile is a 6-2. So whenever you ask me a question, my default, my power is to answer it from my own experience. So when I found human design when I was probably 48, so I'm 53 now. And up until then, I had been trying to fit into everyone else's mold and everyone else's mindset. I would look around me because I have an open head, and I would get very inspired by other people and think, oh, so-and-so behaves like that. That's how I should speak. Or so-and-so behaves like that. That's how I should run a business. And I was always being pulled away from my sense of self because I didn't know who I was. when I found human design, I found the label of generator really powerful, and I still do. I love being labeled, quote unquote, by human design, because now I know I can look at my chart and go, oh, okay, I'm not actually designed to have original ideas. Now, that can be triggering for some people, that can be disempowering, but for me, it's like, I don't have to. I can take two ideas that already exist and join them together. Like, it's not my job to come up with original ideas. I can build from other people's ideas. And just that was completely freeing. It just lifted the pressure off me. And being able to lean into the other label of my profile, my 6-2. 6 lines have 3 distinct life phases. In the first life phase, from birth to 30, we are designed to make a lot of quote unquote mistakes, because we are designed to have big life experiences so that we can learn from them. And these are life experiences that society told me were mistakes. You know, I got married quite young. I had children quite young. I ended up in a very abusive marriage quite young. I traveled the world. I did a lot of things in my first 30 years. But now, in the third phase of my 6 line, I'm able to act as a role model for other people and for other women and for other women in business to say, okay, this is how I dealt with this. This is how I came to understand that this particular marriage didn't define me, or I'm not a victim of this narcissistic person, or now I'm really glad that I had my kids young. So that's what's helped my mindset. It's completely transformed my lack of sense of self into a very definitive sense of self. Let's take our relationship, for example. If I'd met you and I didn't know about human design, I would have been really intimidated in a good way by you, because of your knowledge and because of your power and because of your sovereignty. That would have been quite intimidating to me. But now I'm able to stand in my own sovereignty around you and have a great relationship with you, because I know we're very different. I'm like, oh, Abby's a projector. That's why I feel a certain way around her. And that's why we get on. And that's why, you know, we don't trigger each other in that way. So yeah, all that to say, it's completely flipped my mindset. And it's not an easy journey sometimes, particularly when you work with gene keys, which is a deeper level of human design. It can be very confronting, because the shadows that come up are very accurate. Even if you didn't know they were there, once you see them, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. And it is kind of like going through therapy, like really studying your human design and gene keys. But that's the effect it's had on my mindset. It's helped me stand in my sovereignty.
That's beautiful. I love that. I want to share a quick story, and then I want to we're going to come back around, and we're going to talk about how you even just did the shift to run your own business. But I do want to share this amazing example because of a shared experience between you and I. We went and shared a house with 5 women for an entire week. It was just it was a beautiful week. But none of us had actually ever met each other in person. We had only been meeting everyone over Zoom for a year and a half. Becca and I took a course together, a certification, an international certification together. And we went for testing. And so we shared this home. And it was so beneficial that all of the women, and I think a lot of people would be intimidated of all very grown, very in their own knowingness of women who had never met to go and share space for 5 whole days. That's sometimes a big ask, but we all knew our human designs. And we were able to respect and acknowledge how each of us worked and held our own space differently. And there was a true honoring there. I mean, we had a projector, a manifester, two Manny Gens there. And, you know, coming back, some of us were tired in different ways, and some of us were still energized about it, and we still want to do this. And it made the stay where nobody felt, well, why do they just go up to their room? Are they mad at, did we say something, or are they mad at us? No. Our beautiful manifestor said, listen, I'm in my manifesting. I'm completely tapped out. I need to just be in my own energy for a while. And we honored that. And there was no cheering. There was no judgment. I mean, it truly did make the entire week just a beautiful, relaxing time.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that, but yeah, it did have that effect, because our beautiful manifestor friend, we would be sat kind of having dinner at one end of this big long table, and she was sat at the other end. And if you didn't know about human design, you'd be like, okay, what's going on there? Like, why is she sitting there? But she was really chill, because she was like, I'm just in my manifestor aura over here. And we weren't kind of offended by it. We were like, oh, she's there doing her thing, but she's still kind of listening to what we're saying. So yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that, but it really did. Yeah, it really did make for a really wonderful time.
Absolutely. So
Very calm.
everyone listening, if you're ever going to go and share space with a lot of people you don't know, find everyone's human design. It's easier. So now I want to go back, because I think a lot of our listeners, they're seeing you already fully embodying. You're already, this very successful human design coach. Take us through the steps of what did that intuitive shift? What was that finally shifted you to fully embody and take that leap into what you're doing now, that which you love?
So I had always had this feeling. So I was in corporate. When we moved to Australia, I had to get an office job. So I worked in accountancy and law firms. And for 15 years, 14 years maybe, before I found human design, I've been trying to start my own business so that I could leave. And I couldn't stand working in a corporate environment. I was in a lot of toxic corporate environments with a lot of toxic women, particularly, that I found really difficult. And it got to the point where I tried everything. I tried to be a wedding planner, and you try and be a wedding planner when you're also working full time. It's just, it's a difficult balance. I tried selling dog products. I tried selling jewelry, t-shirts. I tried drop shipping. I tried everything I could think of, and nothing worked. And I thought, well, I just cannot do this. I'm not cut out to run my own business. But towards the end of 2019, I was getting more and more and more desperate to leave my job, like seriously unhappy, very, very unhappy. And I'd had lots of conversations with my husband about it, and he kind of didn't know what to do with me. He couldn't envision how we could do it financially, how we could make it work. So towards the end of 2019, I took yet another course, and I trained as a web designer. And now looking back, I can see how spirit put all the synchronicities in place. But I stumbled across a group for spiritual entrepreneurs, a business group. They needed a web designer for their members. And I put my hand up and said, yeah, that's me. I can do it. And that was end of 2019, early 2020. And of course, then the pandemic hit, and my business just disappeared overnight. It just went, just completely disappeared. And I was still in my miserable corporate job. And so I decided to take another course, it was my first ever coaching group that I joined for spiritual female entrepreneurs. And as part of that group, and that was actually run by a manifestor, which I know now, but I didn't know then. As part of that group, we had a guest speaker, and this guest speaker came in to talk about human design. And I'd never heard of it. And she told us to run our chart, and I looked at my chart and I just snapped my laptop shut and walked away. I thought, there is no way on earth I will ever understand that. Like, that is just crazy to me. I cannot understand it. But anyway, we had this session, and she said to me, I've never seen a chart like yours before. And, ego is like, oh, why? I don't understand this, but I've no idea why you said that. And she explained why. And I was like, okay. And then I heard it again from someone else. I heard this term human design. So as a generator, now I know that we tend to hear things 3 times before we respond to them. And then I got an email about human design, and my generator, my sacral, just caught fire, and I became obsessed with it overnight. My husband was like, what are you doing? I had to take all these courses, and I had all these graphs up, and I would get up early in the morning. I would laminate my chart. I'd blow it up and laminate it and write each and every part of my chart so that I could understand it. It was just enormous, like this big poster size. But now I know, I would have felt shame for that before, this obsession. But now I know as a generator, that's how I operate. If I find something I love, I do it obsessively. And I love that about myself now. So that was March 2020. So I started talking about it on Instagram, and then I took a certification. And by the September that year, I went part-time in my job. And by the November, I'd left completely. And that was 4 years ago. And what happened was, the more I got to understand human design, and the more I understood how to manifest through human design and to be myself rather than trying to be like everyone else, it was like the tectonic plates of my life started to shift underneath me. Everything started to move. The energy of my job started to fall away. And unless I'd experienced it, Abby, I wouldn't have believed it. But it was like Spirit finally said, you found it. Thank God she's found it. Finally, we've got through to her. Let's organize everything so it just falls into place. And that's what has kind of happened ever since. It hasn't been an easy business journey, because none of them ever are. But and then I was led to meet people like you. So it's changed everything for me. It's turned my life upside down in the best way.
I absolutely love that. I think so often some people think, well, I'm spiritual. I believe in spirit, and I've taken intuition classes, and I know about manifesting, but I think there's still this aspect of, okay, I'm going to ask my guides for it, put it here. And I think that they almost just they just stop, like, but I asked for spirit to give it to me. Why isn't it here yet? And without understanding that you have to put in the work. It does require you putting it in. And then we listen to our intuition. And then when we act on that intuition, like you had like the third time coming around, okay, that's for me. Then you acted on it, and then you put in the work. And then that is where spirit starts stepping in and just lining things up and lining things up, lining things up. That doesn't mean that you sit back and do nothing. It's just trusting that as I'm here like rowing my boat, knowing that I'm going to get this, knowing that they're going to help to kind of ease the water a little bit for you, but you still have to keep on rowing.
Yeah. You still have to take aligned action. You have to. And once that momentum gets going and spirit recognizes, okay, she's on this track and she's serious about it, it's then that they start throwing some roadblocks in to see if you're really serious about it. Like, do you really want this? But yeah, you need to meet them. You need to meet them halfway, because as being on the earth plane, there's lots of different ways you can go, lots of different things you can be interested in. But when you find the right one, as a human, you have to take that action. They can't make you do it. But it's like, once that momentum starts, they're like, oh, okay, they like rub their hands together. That's how I think of it. Like, oh, here we go. Yeah. Here we go. Like, we're really going to play the game now. Like, that's what I see in my head.
I love that, because it is excitement. Like, oh, finally, she gets it.
Absolutely.
It's just taken 42 years.
Yeah.
So would you like to, I know that you had pulled up my chart. We keep talking about this chart, and I have seen it, and I agree, it is very overwhelming to see. Would you want to do a possible screen share to show people what it can look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me do that. Okay. It's just saying sharing's disabled. Oh, here we go. Okay. I've anonymized your birth details as well, which is why it doesn't have your name on it.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Is that big enough? Can you see that?
Yes, it is. So you guys, this is over there in the green. That is the chart. And yes, I agree. That looks like a lot to understand.
It does. So the thing that's important to understand about human design is it's another tool. Yes, I can be a bit evangelical about it. And yes, it's the most important thing that's changed my life, but it's important to keep it in perspective. It's another tool. It's not a religion. It's not a cult. It's also not a personality test, which is often how people refer to human design. So that's the important thing, to kind of keep it in perspective and keep kind of grounded to some extent with it. And Ra Uru, who downloaded Human Design, who we've already discussed, said, if you know your type, your authority, and your strategy, which we'll talk about, you're 75% of the way there with Human Design. You don't have to know all the other layers, though all those other layers come in time, or you can get someone else, a coach or a reader, to take you through those. But if we just look at the basics, first of all, how does your energy work? You're a projector. So projectors only, there were no projectors on the earth plane before 1781. Before that, the manifestors and some of the generators were the leaders of the world. For example, the pharaohs of ancient Egypt were manifestors. We needed manifestors to lead the collective at that time, because we needed them to literally manifest the communities, to manifest things for the collective. But after 1781, the projectors started to appear. And you can see the difference in my voice, in my energy. Projector energy is very different to manifestor energy. Projector energy is very, I'm going to say managerial. Now, what I mean by that is it's very, you guys provide guidance, you manage, you're like project managers. You're able to see who fits where in which role. You're very systems oriented, and that can be systems at the kind of micro level, or systems for the collective at a macro level, where you really come into your own as leaders. So because you're very diplomatic leaders, you're being called to step into those leadership positions more and more. So if we think about, regardless of what you think of these people, I'm not interested in personal opinions, but Barack Obama, for instance, is a projector, very kind of big picture, very visionary. Kris Jenner is a projector. So she's able to put her children in the perfect positions, almost like a puppet master, in the perfect positions for them to really thrive, and so that the entity as a whole thrives. Queen Elizabeth II was a projector. So projectors
Nelson Mandela was a 5-1 projector as well.
There you go. There you go. Nelson Mandela, perfect example. But projector energy is, if we think about, let's take it back to basics. So generators and managens are 70% of the collective. So we're very dominant, and our energy is very, very full on. We are the builders of the collective. So projectors are trying to operate in a world that wants them to behave like generators, which is what you were referring to earlier, the difference with you and your husband. So the culture is very push, 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 hustle, make it happen, force things into existence, push things into existence. And for projectors, you guys are you've kind of float above the collective. You have this bird's eye view. We need to keep your energy very light. You have a very high frequency. I'm hearing the word angelic, like this angelic frequency. So we need you to be up here. The more you try and act like generators, the more exhausted you get, the more burnt out you get, because your sacral is open or undefined, which means you don't have the same access to energy that generators do. Now, that's not good or bad. Human design doesn't label anything in that way as good or bad, better or worse. It just is, because each of the types fits together to create this perfect puzzle. But what it does mean is that projectors are certainly not designed to work a traditional 9 to 5. What they're designed to do is to work really deeply for 2 or 3 hours, and then take a break for the same amount of time. Now, a break can be a nap. We've already talked about how you love your naps, which is perfect for a projector. It's not just naps though. It could be things, learning more about things that you love is also very recharging for a projector. So even understanding that, how on earth are projectors supposed to thrive and survive in a world that's full of generators if we don't honor your natural working patterns? So that's why what I was talking about in that reel with Taylor Swift. If she was my client, for instance, let's manifest that she was my client, and I'm trying to have her run a business in the same way that a generator does, which can be 12, 14, 16 hours a day, because they can do it if it's something they love, I am never going to see that client again. I am going to be honest, trigger the hell out of them, and I'm going to burn them out. So I will never see them again. And I know this through bitter experience when I first started coaching without understanding human design. Another thing to know about projectors is that hustle culture, that make it happen culture, is the complete antithesis. You guys need to be invited to share your wisdom. You have a lot of wisdom, but there needs to be an invitation extended for you to share it. Not because you need to sit around and wait for somebody to kind of make things happen. It's that not everyone is ready to hear your message. All the people around you are not designed to hear your message. It's only the people that are designed to hear it that will respond to it. And if you try and give someone guidance and they're not ready to hear it, they push it away and they're like, no, thank you. No, I don't need that. I don't need that. And that's when the projector ends up in their not self, which is bitterness. And that bitterness can be, if you would only listen to me, I know the answer. Why won't you listen to me? Why aren't you listening? I could help you with this thing. Does that make sense? Does that resonate?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really important for the projector to have an invitation extended to them to share their wisdom. And that doesn't have to be, it can be a very literal invitation, or it can be an energetic invitation. But this is why for projectors, it's important to be coached by someone who really understands projector energy, because it can be, I'm going to use the word fragile, and I don't mean it can kind of break easily. I just mean it's very nuanced and it's very new on the planet. So you really needs to be nurtured and treated carefully. So how do we know that your message is being received? What makes you feel good is success. Your signature is success. So for a projector, it's about what makes me feel successful. What have I done today? What does success mean to me? How do I recognize my success? And the final thing about project, well, not the final, but for sake of time, is that you guys have to recognize yourselves as an expert before anyone else can. So again, that's a recipe for disaster. If projectors are on Instagram, for example, waiting for other people to say, oh my goodness, Abby, you know so much about this, you're such an expert in that, and you haven't validated it yourself, then that's a very, very difficult position to find your success from. So it's really important for projectors to say, yeah, I recognize I am an expert. Like I have a zone of, like for you, intuition, I am an expert in this, and lots of other things, but I recognize that this is my absolute zone of genius, and I can help you with this if you're ready to hear my message. Because projectors have, if you look at their aura, it's pointed, whereas generators are kind of open and enveloping and like this, like, come and get me, everything, come and get me. Projectors are very different. It's very, the aura is kind of oval, and then it has like a projection, because you see people at a really deep level. Like projectors do not take any bullshit, and they can tell immediately if somebody's not being who they say they are, or somebody's not telling the truth. So that's just a very, very quick journey around projectors, but you guys are fascinating, really fascinating energy.
I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just wanted everybody, so this is just a beautiful example. Obviously there's so much more involved to this, but this is just the example of that chart. And it still is so overwhelming, but very validating. I resonated with everything that you were explaining, Becca. I do understand it. So if we want to go back to outside of projectors, so we know there's generators and mani gens, projectors. And then what are the other two?
So we have manifestors and reflectors.
Reflectors. And then reflectors are less than 1%, right, of the population. Those are very
reflectors, about 1 to 2%. Sandra Bullock is a reflector. famous reflector. Reflectors are fascinating. I say this about every type. I find every type fascinating, but reflectors are where we just looked at your chart and you had some centers that were colored in and some that were white. Reflectors have all of their centers open, so they're all white. So they're very influenced by the phases of the moon. So the way that a reflector is designed to make a decision is actually on a 28-day cycle, which isn't always practical. But the reason that they do that is because their white and open centers reflect each phase of the moon. So again, reflector energy, if you are a reflector, finding someone who's an expert in that is kind of even more important than all the other types, because it's a very specific way of coaching reflectors. Teal Swan is a reflector. And if you've come across Teal Swan,
Yes.
lover or hater, she's a reflector. She forecasts what's going to come. So if you listen to her language, reflectors, we call them the early warning system. So they do two things. They warn us of what's going to come, and she always does that. If you look at her videos, she's always talking about what's coming, not necessarily what's here. But the other thing that they do is they calibrate us. They reflect the health of the collective back to us. So that's why they can, I'll use that word again, that's why they can be triggering. Because if somebody like her is reflecting what she sees as the health of the collective back to them, some people aren't going to enjoy that. So, yeah, like I said, love her or not, that's what she does.
It's a harsh pill, but sometimes the pill can still be swallowed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I know that you and I have talked about there is this coming time, 2027. And I believe, is it called the Incarnation Cross?
It's called the Cross of the Sleeping Phoenix.
The Cross of the Sleeping. Okay.
Yeah.
So can you dip into that? Because I know there's a big shift coming around 2027.
I love this subject. So each of us in our chart has an incarnation cross. And the incarnation cross, at its simplest, shows you your life purpose. There's a bit of controversy around that, but it basically shows you your overarching life purpose. It's like your background frequency for your life. So not only does each person have an incarnation cross, the global energy has an incarnation cross. And since 1614, since 1615, the global incarnation cross has been the cross of planning. And the cross of planning is an energy of creating community, creating government structures, bringing people together to help each other. It's the energy of loyalty, bargains, agreements. You know, if you do this work for me, I will pay you this much. It's that kind of energy. It's called the cross of planning. In 2027, February 2027, but we're already starting to see the effects of this. The cross of the sleeping phoenix arrives, and it's like the polar opposite energy, Abby. I cannot describe how different that energy is. So here we're moving from this energy of community, this we energy, to this I energy, more about the self. Now, some people can find that confronting. So it's like, well, isn't community, isn't that the best thing? Aren't we all supposed to look after each other? What the cross of the sleeping phoenix is going to do is to say, I don't want you to rely on external authority for direction anymore. I want you to rely on yourself. I want you to be emotionally guided so that the decisions that you make, you're an emotional authority, I'm an emotional authority. The decisions that you make are guided by emotions. So you're going to rely on yourself. And the reason that I want you to do that is because all of these structures we created in the cross of planning are going to crumble, which is exactly what we're seeing now. So you have to understand what your human design authority is, so how you make decisions, and start to practice that, because only you are going to know what is best for you in the cross of the sleeping phoenix. Another thing that's going to happen is, at the moment, we're in this energy of mental awareness. The cross of planning is mental awareness. So thinking things through, making a pros and cons list, that kind of energy. Cross of the sleeping phoenix is ruled by emotions. There are actual There are changes taking place in the emotional solar plexus in gate 55 right now, which are going to mean we're going to be much more emotionally based. And the children who are born after 2027 are going to be emotionally based beings. They're not going to relate to that, think it through, be logical, because it's going to be all about the emotions. Whereas in the cross of planning, it was don't get overly emotional, don't make emotional decisions. Now it's going to be completely different. So that's going to affect everything, how we attract abundance, how we run our businesses, which is why I talk about it in my coaching so much. The coaches that understand what those changes are going to bring are going to be the ones that are the head of the curve. But it's already happening. It's already happening now. But Cross of the Sleeping Phoenix is a big subject, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I mean, honestly, I think that's part of the reason why I felt as projectors, right? So we go up, we live up here, and we see what the collective is needing, all right, and then we come down and we project and we help hold that space. And starting this intuitive shift, it's because we're going into this space where we need to understand and come into the intuitive self. And we're all feeling that shift. So, right now, I think just collectively, everyone has been feeling for quite some time something isn't right. And whether, I mean, yeah, you can see externally, right, that things aren't right in the world, right? That doesn't take a brainiac to see that things are right in the world, but it goes much deeper than that. People are feeling within themselves. I need to change. Like, I just can't keep living in this gerbil wheel that I've been doing. And so so many people are starting to wonder, like, what is that? I know I can feel this, but what does that shift look like? And it is coming to a place where we've been so disconnected for so long from trusting the body. We just have been trusting on sight and hearing that we're being asked as an energy to start coming into the body and to trust that emotional self and know that what is coming up from here and what is being felt from here, it's surrendering into that.
And we can trust it.
You can trust it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that projectors are going to be, you talked about, was it 1614? I believe that you said that, it was coming with the generators, and you look at it and you do all these civilizations were built. America was founded in the Industrial Revolution and technology and all these machines. And I mean, we have been living and just generating, through all of this. And community is a beautiful thing, but you do lose the self in community. And we're almost seeing the impact of completely losing the self. And I think that because we're coming back to this space, it is like, whoa. I think people are like taking this collective, whoa, what has been going on? I've been too busy generating to really take in what has essentially been allowed to root and bloom around the world.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And we are starting to feel that. And it's people like you, projectors like you, who are at the forefront of this shift, because it's happening already. And it's due to happen officially February 2027, but it's like eclipse energy. You feel it for a certain time before, and then you feel it for a certain time afterwards. But we're starting to feel it. And I think that's why it can feel really uncomfortable. Like, oh, I'm being shown over and over again that I can't rely on, let's just say, these external sources. But I've never been taught to rely on myself or trust myself. So where does that leave me? And that can kind of really be a really difficult, jarring space to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mentioned just when I was introducing you that you're intuitive medium. And so the intuition is coming into the body. I mean, I feel like I've mentioned that a lot, but what does that, when I say learn how to come into the body to receive, where does that hit for you?
Where does it hit for me when you say come into the body? The chest, this area. Yeah.
And how does that help you to come into in regards to making life decisions?
So how does human design help me, or how does coming into the body help me?
Coming into the body.
Because I'm starting to realize my body will tell me when something's not right in my life before I realize it, because I've started to get palpitations. Now, I don't know if that's menopause as well. It could be a whole raft of things. But I've never got those before. And I can lay in bed at night and my breathing goes really shallow and my heart starts beating. And before I think, oh my God, what's wrong with me? But now I'm like, something's not right. There's a decision I've made that I don't feel good about, or something's coming that I really need to be aware of. So for me, it's like a bit like reflector energy. It's like an early warning system that I feel kind of right here in the center of my chest.
Yeah. It a week ago, a little over a week ago, this is what it's like to be married to an intuitive. Where I was getting ready to go to fall asleep, and I just looked at my husband and just I just held my chest and I said, something really, really bad is about ready to happen, and it's not to do with you. It's not our family. I said, I have such a heaviness that is laying on me right now, and I don't know where it's coming from, but we're about ready to get like really bad news on
Weather.
yeah. So it is when it comes in, and that's where it hits for me. But outside of, okay, well, how can I use this in just a very practical day-to-day life, making decisions? In just a very 3D way, I needed to pick a car. And I had two choices, and I had already done my pros and cons, and they had just evened out, right? And I truly didn't. And I was actually at lunch with my daughter, and I said, "Oh my God, I need to go in my body. Like I've been going up in my mind. Let me go into the body." And so what I did with that was I actually I always sit back, right? I'm like, and I just come and, because I do live up here, right? So I just came down in the body, and I imagined myself getting into one car, sitting, closing the door and driving. And I took in, how does my body feel driving this vehicle? And I took a snapshot. Okay. Closed it up, dropped it, went back again, dropped back down, went into the other car. Now I'm driving it. And I noticed in both of them how I felt in my body. Was I more excited? And it was easy. It wasn't even a question. So my body knew exactly which vehicle, which I now have been driving for over a year. But I was stuck in my logo. I was stuck in my mind trying to logically figure it out.
There's as you're talking, there's so much in your chart. I'm like, there it is. Can I just share my screen again so I can show you? I get so excited. Okay, so first things first. This is your manifestation style. So you have a very masculine manifestation style. And I always talk, when I explain it, I always talk about the analogy of buying a new car. Like, how do you buy a new car? And the masculine active manifestation style needs all the details. It's like, I am going to manifest this car in so much detail. I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this. So you imagining getting into those specific cars and feeling that detail of sitting in there is very tied to how you manifest in human design. Second of all, your cognition. So these are the deeper layers that I was talking about. Cognition is part of your manifestation style. It's how you connect with the outside world. It's how you bring what's internal, external. So yours is inner vision. That's how you manifest. So imagining, okay, I'm going to sit back and ground myself and imagine me getting into this car. Then imagine me in my inner vision getting into this car. I'm like, that's your cognition. That's how you manifest. And third of all, you are emotionally defined, which means you don't make decisions on the spot. You have to ride that wave of your emotions. And it's perfect if you can have two different things to choose from, because you can try this on for size and ride your emotional wave. Try this one on for size, ride the wave, and then you come to clarity. And it's from that clarity that you make a decision. So thank you for letting me share again. I just got so excited. It's all in your chart.
And this is why, I mean, it absolutely fascinates me. If I were to be pregnant and having a baby, you know, getting ready to have a baby, that would be my birth gift. That would be the minute that I had the baby and I knew their time and had the date. That would be the first thing that I would do is, okay, now I need to know their human design, because that would help me to understand their energy and how they move things and how then they fit into the family.
Absolutely. It's so important. So I've got 2 grandchildren. One's a manifester. And so my grandson's a manifester. My granddaughter is a manifesting generator. Very, very different. My granddaughter's like a whirlwind. Like she's very, very managen, whereas my grandson is more thoughtful and his energy works differently. And he informs his parents, which manifestors do. He informs my daughter and her wife what is going to happen. So just knowing that when I'm around them, I know that my grandson and my granddaughter are going to behave very differently. They're going to make decisions very, very differently. And it's such a gift to know that. And it's not about slapping labels on them. It's about honoring, okay, so the way that she makes decisions completely differently to the way he makes decisions. Yeah. So how can we honor that so that we get the best, you know, they get the best out of life and we get the best experience with them. So important.
I think sometimes in parenting and in, you know, in grandparents, you're so excited because you see that next generation as a reflection of you, right? And I mean, I think just sometimes we tend to do that. Oh, they look just like me, and then we slap on they're going to be just like me. And then we project all the things that maybe we didn't do right in our lives that we would do differently, and we put all these expectations on them. And then, well, you're in our family. This is how things get done in our family. Why aren't you doing this? And then there's these conflicts, right? But if you're a family of generators and you have this sweet little grandchild or this little child who is a reflector, and you're, you know, yelling at them, why can't you do this? Why aren't you doing this? Or like, you know, a little projector, why are you taking a nap? Which my dad, who's a generator, you know, infuriated with me when I was a child because I needed a 15-minute nap every single day. Why are you napping? Because
Abby's napping again. But it's also, yeah, you go.
Yeah, no, it's needed, and that's how it's so helpful. So then we can, I feel that we can almost break some cycles by understanding this as well.
Completely. There's a lot of clues in the lower half of the chart about ancestral patterns. So one of the courses that I used to teach was about money and human design. And these gates at the bottom, because these planets are very slow moving, are ways that we can really understand how are we taking those patterns into our lives. You know, we talk about things like epigenetics. So how do, you know, what your grandparents or great grandparents went through, how is that affecting your money mindset? So there's so much we can look at. And I was going to say as well, don't forget your pets. So for you, your 2 gorgeous little dogs are reflectors. All animals are reflectors. So they all have these open centers. So that's why they reflect back to us our emotion. So if we're very stressed, you'll see your animals kind of pick that up. I was at my sister's a while ago, and she's got this little dog, Teddy, and she was quite stressed. And the minute it happened, Teddy started acting up and like zooming around and being really hyper because he was picking up on her stress. So that's really important too, because our animals kind of absorb that and reflect it back at us. So that's really interesting, I think, to run your animals chart.
I love that. I wasn't aware that each of, I mean, it makes sense to me, but they're all reflectors. I love that. And I love my 2 little puppies. Well, this is just, it's very fascinating, Becca. And I would love for you, can you just talk a little bit just before we close out, how do you use this in coaching? Because I know that you're a human design coach. So Tell us about your work, how you work with your clients. How does this look for you?
So what I love to do is to help either new coaches or coaches who have an existing coaching practice to add human design into their coaching as an extra tool for the reasons that we were talking about with our Taylor Swift example. You could be unknowingly coaching a reflector the same way that you would coach a generator. So it's really giving coaches the tools to add human design to their kind of coaching toolbox to be able to understand their clients much better. So that's how I work with my students at the moment, mostly through passive courses that they can take, just to add that extra layer of knowledge. And also, when I was putting this digital course together, I did some research, and there are around 53 new coaches on average every day coming on Instagram alone. 53 new coaches every day. So there has to be something that marks you out from the crowd, something extra that you offer. And whatever that is for you, human design can be one of those things. So that's how I like to use it with coaches, just to help them add that extra layer, because not everyone wants to be a human design coach. I get that. Not everyone wants to do that, but any coach in any industry, I've had coaches from all sorts of industries take my my course, my pro kit, just to be able to layer human design and make their work more nuanced in that way.
Yeah, I just love it. I love it. So looking at my chart really quick before we stop this screen share. So, one of the things I do is my toning. So where would that be coming from looking at my chart right now, my frequency toning?
So the first place I would look at is your throat center. So your throat center is what we call undefined. So you don't have a fixed way of communicating. Your way of communicating is very fluid, which is going to allow the entities that you channel to use your throat center as a channel to get the work out into the world. So that's the thing that kind of stands out for me the most, because if it was defined, so if it was colored in like mine, they would have a lot more. They don't even try that stuff with me. Like, I have to break it down because I have a very fixed way of communicating, but you don't. For you, and this is part of your genius, you can shift and change your communication style depending on A, who is around you, so that they can receive your message, or B, for those entities that want to come through and channel through your voice box. So I think that's the part of your chart that I'm drawn to the most, is that open, or for you, undefined. So where you have open centers, it means they're completely white. Undefined is because you have a couple of gates here defined. So for you, that would be interesting to look at the energy of these two gates, because all of the energy of your throat center is filtered through these two gates.
Oh,
so that's how deeply we can get in human design, down to the very gate energy, what is happening in that particular gate.
Yeah, that is, it's, all of this is so fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that. I strongly encourage anybody to go, seek Becca out, learn your human design, and see, because it can help you just shift your own just personality. I don't want to call them personality blocks, but maybe you've been really hard on yourself for decades needlessly. And once you understand, that's why it can remove a lot of blocks of senses of shame, and why can't I be like so and so. And yeah,
absolutely. For generators and for managers, we can often feel a lot of shame for that, for being a workaholic. Like, I work all the time and I work a lot. But for managers and generators, it's work-life blend. We've been taught you have to find a balance. There is no balance for us. That's nonsense. I can't balance work and life. Work is very, like, it's 95% of my life. So it's a blend. And even being able to own that and not trying to kind of hide how much I work, or feeling ashamed of how much I work, being proud of it. Yeah, okay. And no, my husband knows. We were on vacation last week. I was by a pool with a laptop, and he said, I'm not even going to try and stop you. Like, just handle it how you want to handle it. He said, there's no point in me telling you to relax. this is how you relax. Because I had a cocktail, I had my laptop, I was in and out of the pool, work-life blend. So yeah, all of that to say, it can stop you beating yourself up for things that people kind of think you should be ashamed of. You don't have to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand. I am the spouse of a generator like you, Manny Jen, and every vacation he is still working and still having meetings, and I never get mad about it because that's just how he flows. So I just accept it for what it is. And
I love that.
yes, yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Becca, so much for coming on and sharing all of your knowledge. How can everyone find you to work with you? What's the best place?
Really easy. I'm always hanging out on Instagram. So at the Becca Francis, and my website is beccafrancis.com. But Instagram is always the best place to get me. I'm always in my DMs.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And everyone at home, thank you for tuning in. And
Thank you for having me.
absolutely. And just keep shifting, keep trusting and shifting.